What's up, kings and queens? It's Dan from Daft Previews, and in this video, I'm going to take you through the most comprehensive NBA player prop preview you're going to see for all 8 games on this upcoming slate. I'll be going through all the key matchups, and I'll let you know whether they have a good or a bad matchup. I'll go through all their form lines. I'll go through absolutely everything you need to best prepare you for your picks for these upcoming games. As always, I'll be sharing my screen and I'll take you through every single prop and line. Let's go! We're kicking it off with the Charlotte Hornets versus Detroit Pistons. Now, Cade Cunningham's a game time decision, along with Caleb Martin and Nick Richards, so there's limited markets available. But we're taking a look at Jalen Duren here, and we'll have a look at his points and his rebounds. The Hornets allow the second most points and rebounds to centers this season. Over the last 15 games, they're allowing the most points and the third most rebounds to centers. So firstly, on the points front, we can see Duren's hit this in 7 of his last 10 games, averaging 15.8 points per game. In his last 4 head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in all 4 games. And looking at his rebounds prop, he's only hit this once in his last 10 games. The line's obviously higher because of how good the matchup is. The last time he had an easy matchup, Washington Wizards, he pulled down 19 rebounds. In 4 games against the Hornets, he's averaging 14.5 rebounds per game, covering in 3 of his last 4. Cade Cunningham's back, so interesting to see how he performs with Cade in the lineup. Well, he may be back, but if Cade is there, we can see that. Jalen Duren's hit this line in 4 of 10 games with Cade in the lineup. The only time he hit this line is with Cade in the lineup versus Charlotte Hornets. So if there's no Cade, you can probably bet the under. If Cade's there, take the over. Very interesting. That's his rebounds. Looking at his points, points-wise, 14 with Cade. So actually, I'll take that back. I just got confused. Gone under his points line every single time against the Hornets, with or without Cade. Rebound-wise, he tends to do well. God damn. The next player that we're going to look through is LaMelo Ball. Checking out his points and his assist prop. The Pistons allow the 3rd most points to point guards on the season. Over their last 15 games, the Pistons are allowing the 5th most assists to point guards. So, could have a good matchup on either end. But let's have a look. Points-wise, he's hit this in 5 of his last 10 games. Came back from injury in this game against the Spurs. So he's only hit this line once since he's come back from injury. Looking at his head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in all 4 games against the Detroit Pistons. Assist-wise, he's hit it 2 out of 4 games against the Pistons. And in his last 10. Came back from injury against the Spurs. Has only hit this assist line once. Up against the Minnesota Timberwolves. It does appear, though, he doesn't have a minutes restriction. Played 35 minutes against the Minnesota Timberwolves in that game. So we could see LaMelo back playing his regular minutes. I think right now, given his recent form, I probably like his assist line a little bit better. He's done a better job of that against the Pistons. It should be a high-scoring game. Hasn't scored very well against the Pistons in the past, and it's not because of minutes. Field goal attempts are a little bit inconsistent, but no Terry Rozier, so he's been traded, so I'd be interested in seeing how he plays. The next I'm quite interested to look through is Brandon Miller. Looking at his points prop. The reason why, 1, Terry Rozier's been traded, so Miller's going to see a lot more opportunities. The Pistons also allow the 5th most points to shooting guards this year. On their last 15 games, the Pistons allowing the 2nd most points to shooting guards. So Brandon Miller's really put together a strong 3 games, which is pretty crazy. 24, 23, and 27 points. And he's only hit this in 4 of his last 10, though. So this season, he's averaging 14.9, and that's now up to 17.5 his line. So the sports books are expecting more opportunities for Brandon Miller. Let's do a deeper dive into the last 3, because he only had 1 head-to-head matchup against the Pistons, scoring 17. In his last 3 games, we can see he is playing more minutes than he averages, averaging 28 in his last 10, but he's played 35, 35, and 29.4 in those 3 games as well. 14, 17, and 13 shot attempts. His field goal percentage was quite high, though. Looking back on his last 3 games, you can see that he shot 57, 47, and 85% from the field. But what would be very interesting to see is how he performs on these shot attempts. So 14, 17, and 13. If we were to filter his games where he's taken a minimum of 13 shots, we can see that he's hit this line in 10 of 20 games. Now, we're not going to see Terry Rozier, so he's been traded. So let's just assume he takes up to 15 shots in this game and see what happens with our data. Brandon Miller takes at least 15 shots. He hits this line in 8 of 13 games, averaging 18.6 points per game. So that's quite interesting. There's probably more research needed to be done, but Brandon Miller, quite interested in taking his points line tomorrow, but it's something I need to dive a little bit further into. The last one there, let's have a look at Miles Bridges. So he doesn't have a call out in terms of his matchup, positional matchup, but just looking at his form, points wise, 24.5 points. So he's seen a massive increase in his line. His line has been sitting around 19.5 against the Timberwolves, but normally it's about 20.5. So no Terry Rozier. His line has gone up by 4 points. He's hit that in 7 of 30 games this season. Should be a high-scoring game, but I'm not sure if Bridges can get it done there. Rebound-wise, his line's at 7.5. He's only hit that at 43% this season and 3 of his last 10. Assist-wise, he's hit this in 10 of 30 games. So, yeah, not much I'm liking about Bridges. I think he'll score points, but 24.5 is quite a high line. So, might have to go back into last season to see how did he didn't play last season, did he? So, yeah, no play on Miles Bridges. I think we're in this particular game. Jalen Duren rebounds. LaMelo Ball will probably just want to watch to see how he performs. Brandon Miller, I think he might be the value play in this game. We're jumping into the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Washington Wizards. First player we're looking here is at Jordan Poole, checking out his points line. And that's because the Timberwolves allow the second fewest points. They also allow the fewest assists to shooting guards on the season. Over their last 15 games, though, the Wolves are allowing the third fewest points to shooting guards. Having a look at Jordan Poole, he's hit this line in 6 of his last 10, averaging 15.2 points per game. In head-to-head matchups against the Wolves, he's actually done quite well, hitting in 3 of his last 4, averaging 21 points per game. Now, these games were last season, different team, different environment, so he hasn't seen them in a Wizards uniform. In those games, he played 30 minutes and took 16.5 shots per game. Looking at his last 10 games, though, what can we see? Playing 28 minutes per game and he's shooting the ball 13.5 times. But he is highly inconsistent when it comes to his volume. So Jordan Poole, unless he's got the best matchup in the world, his form is great and he's got previous form against them, probably not a player that I'd be taking. The next player we're looking at is Kyle Kuzma. And we'll look at his points, rebounds, and his assist line in this one. The Timberwolves allow the third fewest points and rebounds and the fewest assists to power forwards this season. Over their last 15 games, they're allowing the 7th most points, though, the 2nd fewest rebounds, and the fewest assists. So let's have a look at his points prop. He's hit this in 4 of his last 10 games, averaging 17.8 points per game. Head-to-head matchups, he's hit this in 1 of 2 against Minnesota Timberwolves. Both of those games were last year. What else is interesting about his last 10? You can see 31 minutes per game, 17 shot attempts per game. Field goal percentage is down 42%, so that's not great. There's nothing in his points lines that suggests that he's going to go over or under. I don't like betting on Kyle Kuzma anyway. Rebounds and assists, we know he's got a difficult matchup there. He's hit his rebound line in 4 of his last 10. But in head-to-head matchups last year, he was rebounding very well. Looking at his assist prop, he had 1 game with 9 assists, another with 1 against the Timberwolves. Looking at his last 10, we can see that the number of assists are really increasing. So hitting in 5 of his last 10, but covering quite well most recently. It is a difficult matchup, so yeah, I can't really say what the play is here on Kyle Kuzma. So I'm not a big fan of his, so I'm going to prefer to avoid him. Another player we're looking through is Daniel Gafford. He's got a very difficult matchup for points and rebounds. The Wolves allow the 5th fewest points and the fewest rebounds to centers this season. Over their last 15, the Wolves allow the 3rd fewest points and the 2nd fewest rebounds. Points-wise, 9.5 is his line. He's hit it in 5 of 10, averaging 9 per game. 2 matchups against the Wolves last season, scored 6 points in both games. In those games, he only played 16 and 19 minutes. So we can see over his last 10 games, he's playing 26 minutes. So he's got a bigger role, so more opportunities. But if you were to break that down, 6 points with an average of 19 minutes per game, even if he plays 25, probably not going to hit the 10. So looking at his rebounds, though, 6.5 is his line. He's hit it in 5 of 10, averaging 7.1 rebounds. Both matchups against the Wolves, he's gone under this line 4 and 6, but as we know, limited minutes. So I think the line is about right, to be honest. The matchup is going to be difficult, so I think my main call out is definitely don't take him for an over, but I wouldn't be confident taking his under in points and rebounds based off what I'm seeing. Another player here is Mike Conley. Looking at his assist prop, 7.5 is his line. He's averaging 6.5 this season, so he does have a great matchup. He's averaging 7.2 assists in his last 10 games, hitting it 4 times. 3 matchups against the Wizards, 10, 6, and 6, averaging 7.3. The Wizards, they do allow the second most assists to point guards this season, and over the last 15 games, they average the most assists to point guards. So he does have a great matchup here. There's going to be a lot of assists in this game. Will Mike Conley be the one to get them? You know, shown over his last 3 games where he's had 10 plus assists. So one to watch, maybe worth playing a small amount at 10. I wouldn't take the line because he's either getting 10 or he's not getting it at all. So let's jump into Anthony Edwards. You can't talk about the Wolves and not touch on the Ant-Man. In terms of the matchup, the Wizards allow the 3rd most rebounds and the most assists to shooting guards this season. Over the last 15, they allow the 7th most points and the most rebounds. So we'll go through all of his props just to see what's going on here. So points-wise, 29.5 points is his line. He's only hit this in 2 of 10, averaging 22 points per game in that span. He's averaging 25.5 points per game this year, covering this line at only 38%. So we see a very elevated line due to the matchup. The Wizards just aren't a great team in general, but 29.5 is quite high. He did score 29 and 34 in the 2 games last year, though. But not a play that I'd be willing to take. Let's have a look at his rebound prop. 5.5 rebounds. He's averaging 5.3 this year. He's covered this line 16 out of 40 games. He's only hit this in 3 of his last 10. In his matchups against the Wizards, 8 rebounds and 5 rebounds. So, look, I think the line is right. He's capable of getting 5.5 rebounds, over or under it, but there's nothing in the data that indicates he's definitely going to go one way or not. He doesn't have an easier matchup on the rebound front, so probably require a bit more investigating, but nothing strong from me there. And the next one is his assists. So we can see over his last 5 or 6 games, passing the ball much better, getting more assists, averaging 7 assists in his last 5 games. On the season, he's averaging 5.2. In those matchups with the Wizards, didn't get many assists at all, 2 and 3. So not liking too much of what I see about Anthony Edwards, but let me know if you guys choose to take him. The next one is Karl-Anthony Towns. So his shoulders must be sore. Scored a lot of points in that last matchup. A loss against the Hornets. Was it 62 points or something like that? But went cold in the 4th quarter. But the Wizards, they allow the 5th most rebounds and the 6th most assists to power forwards. Over their last 15, the Wizards allow the 2nd most rebounds to power forwards. So in terms of matchup, rebounds is probably his best bet. But having a look at his last 10, he's got an 8.5 rebound line. It's just in line with his average this year. He's averaging 8.8, but he's only hit this line in 2 of his last 10 games, averaging 8 rebounds per game. The one matchup against the Wizards, he only had 2 rebounds. He played 22 minutes in that game. So no strong information coming on the rebound front there. In terms of assists, 2.5 assists is his line. He's averaging 3 assists this season. The odds aren't the best, though. A little bit juiced. Head-to-head matchup, he got 4 assists in those 22 minutes in the last game against the Wizards. Points-wise, what are we looking at here? 23.5 points is his line. Fresh off scoring 62 points. Who knows what's going to happen in this one? I won't be backing Karl-Anthony Towns. I probably won't be playing too many bets in this game. I might have a look at this man, though. Rudy Gobert. Looking at his points and rebounds. We know the Wizards are terrible at defending centers. They allow the most points and the most rebounds to centers this season. Over their last 15 games, they still allow the most rebounds to centers. So let's look at his points prop first. In his last 10, averaging 14.3 points per game. He's hit this 5 times in 2 head-to-head matchups against the Wizards. Scored 19 and 17 points last season. Let's have a look at his rebound lines. 13.5 is what you can get Rudy Gobert for. 5 of his last 10 he's covered in, averaging 30.6. Head-to-head matchups, he's got 7 and 19 rebounds. So looking at his last 10, he's actually had a lot of good matchups. His last 4 games, Pistons allow a lot of rebounds to centers. The Memphis Grizzlies allow a lot of rebounds. The Thunder allow a lot of rebounds, and the Charlotte Hornets all allow a lot of rebounds. So his last 4 games, he's had some excellent matchups. Just hasn't been able to deliver consistently, really. So that alone probably enough to scare me. The Wizards obviously give up a lot, but he's also shown inconsistency in his form playing against the Wizards. So the matchup is great. He's done it many times before, but he's had good matchups recently and he hasn't delivered. In his defense, he hasn't had back-to-back easy matchups and consistently gone under. So he hasn't had 2 poor rebounding games back-to-back. So only 11 rebounds against the Charlotte Hornets in a loss. You can assume the Timberwolves come out there and smack the Washington Wizards. If you're thinking about the script, the Washington Wizards are going to lose. They're going to miss a lot of shots. So Rudy's going to probably have more rebound opportunities. So that's where my mind's going at the moment, but I'd like to look into it a little bit more. But yeah, definitely a strong lean on Rudy Gobert. Let's jump into the next one. We're jumping into the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Miami Heat. So Terry Rozier and Harkes Jr., game time decisions, so limited markets available at the moment. Let's have a look at Tyler Hero. Could play point guard, could play shooting guard, depending on where Terry plays. But let's have a look at all of his props. Points wise, it's 20.5. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10, averaging 19. 3 games against the Grizzlies, 23, 24, and 6 earlier this season. I think a lot of this really depends on Terry. So I wouldn't make any plays on Tyler's points at the moment unless you know whether Terry Rozier is playing. That's going to impact his ability somewhat. Rebound-wise, 6 out of his last 10, averaging 5.6 boards. He's hit this in only 1 of 3 games against the Grizzlies. So nothing sticking out to me there. Assist-wise, slowed down over his last 4. His assist line's only 3.5. And if Terry Rozier doesn't play, Tyler Hero does play point guard. Can you assume that he's going to get more assists? I'm not too sure. But 2 out of 3 games he's hit his assist prop against the Grizzlies. But that game earlier this year, he struggled. I wonder how many minutes he played. Yeah, he only played 8 minutes. So if anything, he got 2 assists in 8 minutes in that last matchup against the Grizzlies. He got 1 rebound and 6 points in 8 minutes. So he was actually going to have a productive game if he played more minutes. Tyler Hero, probably not a bad bet, but I'd wait till Terry Rozier is confirmed. So is Harkes. Jaren Jackson Jr., let's talk about him. So the Heat allow the 5th fewest rebounds to power forwards. Over the last 15 games, the Heat allow the least points to power forwards. So this Memphis Grizzlies team is absolutely depleted. Jaren Jackson Jr. takes the most shots by a long margin. But let's have a look at it. Last 2 games against the Heat, 25 and 28 points. Last 10 games, he's averaging 23.9 points, hitting this in 5 of his last 10. So points-wise, probably not the worst bet in the world, but, you know, Miami Heat are a very good defensive team, only allowing the 5th most points this season overall. But Jaren Jackson Jr. scores a lot of points from outside. Has been attacking the rim quite a lot lately, but yeah, not a prop that I'd be confident taking based on the matchup and his form. Last one I wanted to talk through is Bam Adebayo. So looking at mostly his rebounds prop, but let's look at all of them. Points wise, 21.5 is his prop. He's hit this in 5 of 10. 3 games against the Grizz, 15, 26, and he had 30 points earlier this season. But if you're looking at the script for that game, Tyler Hero went out, so that's 1 less scoring option. Tyler Hero is playing today, but obviously a lot of people aren't playing, right? So points wise, I'm not too sure. Let's have a look at his rebounds. Rebound wise, that's where he's got the best matchup, I would say, but his line is a lot higher, but that's probably because of the matchup. He's averaging 10.5 rebounds this year. This line set at 11.5. He's only hit that 9 times in 33 games and 2 of his last 10. 3 games against the Memphis Grizzlies, he's got under this line in all 3 games. So look, I personally don't like betting on Miami Heat games. Statistically, a lot of their players are inconsistent. There's no one who is definitely going to deliver, so not liking what I see there. Assist wise, he's got under his assist line in all 3 games against the Grizzlies. Looking at his last 10, it's actually been quite good. Look at that. Some games with 6 and 7, lines at 4.5. But I guess there's a lot of inconsistencies. If you want to look at his PRA, he's hit this PRA 16 of 33 games, 5 in his last 10, but only 1 of his last 3 against the Grizz. So, yeah, not loving too much about this game, but Tyler Hero or Terry Rozier, there could be some interest there. It all depends on who plays. So, Check back an hour before tip-off to see who's confirmed. Jumping into the next game, we're looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder versus San Antonio Spurs. Now, Trey Jones from the Spurs is a game-time decision, but let's jump into SGA. Spurs allow the most points to point guards this season. Over their last 15 games, they allow the 6th most points and the 2nd most assists to point guards. So one risk in this is obviously a blowout, but the Oklahoma City Thunder are on a back-to-back in this one. They just versed the Portland Trailblazers, and that game was a lot closer than anyone would have expected. So SGA probably logged more minutes in that game than they originally anticipated for, like 35 minutes per game on a back-to-back on the road. But looking at his points prop, he's hit this 32.5 points in 4 of his last 10. He's averaging 30. 2 games against the Spurs, he went under in both games. So I feel like this game might be a lot closer than the line probably suggests. If it's close, SGA might play more minutes, get more opportunities. But yeah, I think the line is about right, 32.5. I'm not saying he would go over or under. Looking at his rebounds prop, it's 5.5. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10, averaging 4.7. Against the Spurs, he has had good rebounding games, finishing with 6. Looking at his assist prop, 5.5 assists. He's gone for 8 and 5 against the Spurs. Looking at his last 10, he's covered this in 7 of his last 10, averaging 6.2. I do like the assist prop. Obviously, we know what he can deliver on the points wise. Rebound wise, he's shown that he can get it done too, especially against the Spurs. But I'm not sure. Maybe if you wanted to make a same game parlay, something safe, 30 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists perhaps, or 30 points and 4 assists. See what you get out of that. But yeah, not 100% sure on SGA just there. Not feeling that one. Josh Giddey, we just took him recently. He absolutely sucked. Well, it's not that he sucked. Let's be honest. My betting skills sucked. I picked him. But the Spurs allow the 2nd most rebounds to shooting guards this season. We know Giddey's capable of doing that. Assist-wise, burnt me. Took him for assist against Portland. Didn't get it done. 4 games against the Spurs, though. 4.5 is his line. Averages 6.3 assists. Got 7 assists earlier this season against them. Rebound-wise, he's hit it in every game against the Spurs. 7 rebounds earlier this season. Over his last 10. Had strong rebound games, but not against Portland. Oh, God. Points-wise, 11.5. Not doing very well there. But given that he doesn't get a lot of opportunity, and if the game is close, what's funny is if the game's close, he actually gets less opportunities. Whereas if it's a blowout, they tend to play him a little bit more. So, not a fan of Josh Giddey right now. But the next player we're going to look through is Jalen Williams. So, Jay Will and the Spurs, they allow the 3rd most assists to power forwards this season. Over their last 15 games, they allow the 8th most rebounds to power forwards. But let's check all of his props. We know he's capable of delivering in all fronts. His points line is 18.5. Now, he's hit that in 9 of his last 10 games, averaging 21.3 points per game. Against the Spurs, he's hit this 2 out of 4 games. Only matchup this season, he finished with 11. Rebound-wise, 3 of his last 4 against the Spurs, averaging 6. Looking at his last 10, he's averaging 5.2 rebounds, but he is trending down in that area. Looking at his assist, bit up, bit down, quite inconsistent, perfectly capable, averaging 5.9 assists. Against the Spurs, he's had 1 game with 10 assists, but his most recent one, he had 3. So if you're just looking at the data, it's a difficult one to read. So just looking at the numbers and not having a chance to research any further, I've got no strong leans on this one. But, you know, Jalen Williams for 15 points could be something you add to your parlays. Obviously, his recent form is excellent. Should be a high-scoring game as well. Check the pin comments, and that will have all my final plays in it. Let's talk about Chet Holmgren. The Spurs, they allow the 3rd most points and rebounds to centers this season. Over their last 15 games, they allow the 3rd most points and the 4th most rebounds to centers. Now, Chet's line's only 15.5 when it comes to his points, and that's because he's been sucking lately. He's gone under this line in 6 straight games, and I know that his line's been, 17.5 to 18.5, and he's still been going well under those. I don't know what it is. Is he starting to fatigue? I'm not too sure. So, hasn't covered it very well recently. His lone matchup against the Spurs and Wemby, he only scored 9 points earlier this year. So looking at his rebounds, though, my God, if you can ever predict a Chet Holmgren rebound prop, I salute you, because it's really good or it's terrible. Last game against the Spurs, he only had 7 boards, averaging 6.4 in his last 10, but the line set at 7.5. The matchup is there, but yeah, I'm not too sure about that. Assist-wise, pretty consistent. He's got over 2 assists in 10 straight games. He's covered 2.5 assists in 8 of his last 10, but you'd have to put $174 down in order to get $100 back. So the line is absolutely juiced to the gills. Let's look at the Spurs players. Devin Vassell, there's no positional call out for this one, so let's go through his props. Points wise, he's covered 17.5 points in 5 of his last 10. Last 4 games have been quite good: 21, 17, 21, and 22. Games against Oklahoma City Thunder, covered in 2 of 4, but gone well under in his last 2. Let's look at his assist prop as a shooting guard. He's gone under his assist line in 4 straight games against the OKC Thunder. And looking at his last 10, he's hit it 5 times, but his last 3 games have been excellent passing the rock. 7, 5, and 9 assists per game. So when I see something like that, it doesn't mean I bet it, but it means there's something worth investigating, because something has changed. Either they're playing him differently, or the Spurs are shooting better, or has he got a new connection with Wemby? I don't know where these assists are coming from, but that tells me that this needs to be looked into. Let's talk about Wemby. He's got no positional call out here, but the bloke's like 9 foot tall. I'm pretty sure he's got an advantage somewhere. Looking at his points for up, 22.5 points. He's been killing it. 7 of his last 10 that he's covered in, 5 straight, averaging 27.2 points per game in his last 5. What are we looking at here? Head-to-head matchups, that can't be right. 8 points against the OKC Thunder. I felt like he had a bigger game, but last 5, absolutely killing it. Rebound-wise, a bit unpredictable, to be honest. He had 14 rebounds apparently in that matchup against OKC. His last 10, 4 of his last 10 that he's covered, 8.9 rebounds. And looking at his assists, man, they go up and down too. So that's a bit difficult to predict. But look, I do love what I'm seeing in terms of points. 22.5 points. He scored 33 points against Joel Embiid, which was, it's not a back-to-back, so I think Wemby should be sweet. Looking at his minutes, though, because we know he has been on a minutes restriction, we can see that he's slightly seeing an uptick in his minutes. I remember at this point, he was capped at 24 minutes. His new cap looks like it's 27 to 28 minutes. He's averaging 25 minutes over his last 10 games, and he's averaging 24.4. The matchup with Chet's not a difficult one for Victor Wembanyama. So I do like his points prop, and I think a lot of people would be taking that tomorrow. So keep an eye on the pinned comment. You'll probably see a Wemby mention in it. Might even put him on the thumbnail. But who else do we have in this game? We've got Lou Dort, not interested, and Sohan, not interested in looking at him either. Pumping the brakes on this preview, and this is for all those people who haven't seen this channel and these videos before. If it's your first time and you're wondering where the hell are you getting all these data from, what's going on with all these numbers, I'll let you know that I use a website called props.cash to sort through all of this data. If you do want access to this, you can do your own research with it. I've got links in the description. You can sign up today and get 25% of your first month using the code DAFT25. And for everybody else who continues to watch this, I thank you. Our next milestone for this channel is to get the 3,000 subscribers. So if you do appreciate all the effort and you like what you see in the video, please like it, sub to the channel if you're new, and drop me a comment for this YouTube algorithm. And let's get back into the preview. Looking at the Portland Trail Blazers versus the Houston Rockets. Now, Jalen Green is a game time decision for the Houston Rockets. The first player we're looking through is Fred VanVleet. And that's because the Blazers allow the 5th most points and rebounds to point guards. Over their last 15 games, they allow the most points, the 2nd most rebounds, and the 4th most assists. So I'll go through all of his props today. Points-wise, 16.5 is his line. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10. In terms of his matchup, has struggled to score against the Blazers in the past, scoring 14 and 11. Rebound prop, he's hit this in 5 of his last 10, averaging 3.4 rebounds per game. Yeah, but he's also had a lot of games with 1, so that scares me a little bit. But 2 games against the Rockets, he's pulled down 6 rebounds in both of them. And assist-wise, he's hit this in 4 of his last 10 games. His line's at 8.5, which is quite high. And in those matchups, 7 and 9 assists against the Portland Trail Blazers. So Fred Van Vliet's form, difficult to read. So definitely would require some more investigating. This one won't be as straightforward. There are still props available for Jalen Green at the moment. So I'll quickly preview this if he does play. The Blazers allow the 6th most points and the 3rd most assists this season. Over the last 15, they allow the 2nd most assists to shooting guards. Points-wise, he's a bit inconsistent. 16 points per game is his average in his last 10, but he's only hit this 4 times. 2 games against the Trailblazers, he's gone under in both of those. Rebound-wise, he's been doing a great job of that this season, but especially over his last 10. He's averaging 4.6 rebounds per game. His line's set at 3.5, but this line's pretty juicy. You need to lay $150 to get $100 back. Head-to-head matchups, he's got 6 and 5 rebounds. So would you take him for 4.5? Probably not. That changes things quite a bit because he does finish on 4 rebounds quite often, but that's not the worst play in the world. Looking at his assists, he's covered this in 4 of his last 10, averaging 3.5. Head-to-head matchups, 2 and 4. So nothing spectacular coming out of Jalen Green. Let's talk about Jabari Smith Jr. Now, the Portland Trail Blazers, they allow the 4th fewest points to power forwards over the last 15 games. Jabari Smith, 3 games against the Blazers in his career, hasn't gone over this one at all. Looking at his last 10, bit inconsistent, hitting in 4 of his last 10, averaging 14 points. But yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Up and down, lots of down, but then up again. Let's check his rebound prop. 8.5 rebounds. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10, averaging 9.4 rebounds. Rebound numbers very low against the Portland Trail Blazers, 4.7 as an average. But we can see 2, 4, and 8 trending in the right direction for Jabari Smith Jr. Alperen Sengun, let's have a look at him. Over the last 15 games, the Blazers allow the 2nd most points and the 6th most rebounds to centers. Looking at his points over his last 10, he's only hit this line in 3 of those games, averaging 23.3 points per game. This line is quite high. There was a stretch where he had more difficult matchups nonetheless, but that line has usually been at around 21 or 22 points. He's gone under in 3 straight games against the Trailblazers. This was last season, though. He's a much different player now, so I wouldn't put too much stock into that. Rebound-wise, he's been doing quite well recently, Sengun, averaging 9.7 in his last 10, covering in 6 games. He's hit it in 3 straight, 10, 14, and 12. Head-to-head matchups against the Trailblazers, 11, 8, and 10. So very strong rebound numbers out of Sengun. That might be one that I consider, but you'd have to look into it. Assist-wise, averaging 2 assists per game against Portland, 5 in his last game. In his last 10 games, though, look at this. He's only hit this 5 times out of his last 10, averaging 4.3. But if you look at his last 5 games, he's got 3, 6, 5, 6, and 10 assists for Sengun, averaging 6 assists in that game, 5-game span. Malcolm Brogdon, let's have a look at him. He's starting a point guard in this one. Now, the Rockets, he's got a difficult matchup. The Rockets allowed the 2nd fewest assists to point guards this season. Now, Brogdon, he's hit this. Let's look at his last 10. He's hit this in only 3 of his last 10. Has played off the bench, has played as a starter. Looking at his minutes, you can see it there. So his minutes really correlate to his assists. He's back starting, so you can probably assume that he's going to play more than 30 minutes in this game. If we filter his games down to where he plays more than 30 minutes, when he plays more than 30 minutes, Malcolm Brogdon averages 7.5 assists this year, hitting this in 12 or 14 games. Over his last 10 games where he's played more than 30 minutes, he's hit this 9 out of 10, averaging 7 assists per game. So the matchup might be difficult, but he's shown if he gets the minutes, he can get these assists anyway. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything in props.cash that tells me why he's starting at the moment. Scoot Henderson doesn't appear to be injured. We know Shaden Sharp is out, but interesting. We're seeing more Brogdon minutes. And when we're seeing more Brogdon minutes, we're seeing more production. So I'll leave that with you to decide. That's something for me to look into a bit more later. Who's next? Anthony Simons. So the Rockets allow the 7th fewest points to shooting guards. Over their last 15 games, they allow the 6th most points to shooting guards. So on the season, they do a good job of shooting guards, but more recently, they haven't. But let's check his lines out and see what happens. Looking at his last 10 games, he's hit this 3 times, averaging 17.4 points per game. 2 head-to-head matchups with the Rockets, though. Check this out. 30-plus points in his last 2 games against the Rockets. Keeping in mind the last one was in December of 2022. So it's been about 13 months since he's last done that. So there's nothing yelling out to me on the points front. Assists as a shooting guard. He's only averaging 4.8 per game. His line's at 4.5. I wouldn't commonly take the over or the under. Looking at his head-to-head matchup, there's nothing I really like there either. We're having a look at Jeremy Grant here. So Jeremy Grant's been moved from the 4 to the 3, meaning the power forward to the small forward. Jabari Walker has been getting the start at 4, so they're playing a bigger lineup. He had some good games recently and some poor ones. So his line's at 19.5. He's hit this 4 times in his last 10 games. 2 head-to-head matchups against the Rockets, 15 and 13. The Rockets do allow the 7th fewest points to small forwards on the season, so you might see a bit of Dylan Brooks on him, who is a good defender. But nothing that I'm liking out of Jeremy Grant's points. Obviously highly inconsistent with a difficult matchup today. Rebound-wise, he's never been a good rebounder, but this interests me. Of his last 4 games, he's been rebounding quite well. I'm just wondering, is that because he's probably playing small forward now and not power forward? I'm not too sure. That requires an investigation. And assist-wise, he doesn't do too much with those. Anyway, the last player to really talk through from this game is DeAndre Ayton, though. Now, he doesn't have a positional call-out disadvantage or an advantage, but look, interesting to see someone as good as DeAndre Ayton with a line at 10.5. Recent form hasn't been great. He's 3 games back from an injury. Looking at his minutes, 23, 22, and 27. He does average 29.4 minutes in his last 10 games, so could be on some sort of minutes restriction, but he hasn't been getting much done. Head-to-head matchups against the Rockets, 8 points and 5 points, and in those games, he didn't play many minutes at all. So it's going to be difficult to get a read on DeAndre Ayton. Last 3 games are the main ones we're looking for. He's got his rebound line set to 8.5, and I can't for the life of me figure that out because the Rockets don't have it's not like an easy matchup in terms of rebounds to centers. He's only been playing about 20 minutes per game. Actually, let's do this. These are his rebound numbers for this season. So let's say he plays, let's filter his games to where he plays less than 25 minutes. He's played less than 25 minutes in 6 games. He's still covered this line 3 times, believe it or not. So maybe the 8.5 isn't so ridiculous. But yeah, I won't be betting on DeAndre Ayton, I can promise you that. Let's jump into the next game. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis is a game time decision, but should play. But Karis LeVert's a game time decision for the Cavs, so we don't know whether he's going to be suiting up. First player we're talking through is Donovan Mitchell. So the Bucks allow the 3rd most points to point guards, and over their last 15, and on the season, they allow the 4th most points. So we know that's a pretty straightforward one. They've given up a lot of points to point guards all year, but Donovan Mitchell's been inconsistent as hell. 3 from 10 he's covered in, 2 of 5 against the Milwaukee Bucks. In those games, he has had a strong scoring output, but he's only covered this line twice. Looking at his assists, because I know he's heavily involved in the offense, he's hit his assist line in 4 of 10, averaging 7.4. Be interesting to see points and assists. Is he making up for it on either end? It doesn't appear so. So looking at his assists against the Bucks, he's hit this in 1 of 5. So Donovan Mitchell should have a good game. It's just that his lines are so high. 31.5 points, 7.5 assists. That's quite a lot. And there's nothing in the data that tells me he's going to do either one. So I can predict a strong game from Donovan Mitchell. I just don't know where it's going to come from. The next one is Jarrett Allen, and this should be a bit more predictable. In terms of matchup, the Bucks allow the 6th most assists to centers in the league. But points-wise, he's been great against them. He's covered it in 3 of 5 games, averaging 16.6 points per game. These 2 games of this season, 30 points and then 21 points against the Bucks. Looking at his last 10, he's hit this 5 times, averaging 17.5 points per game. 14.5. Yeah, probably take that, looking at how he's gone in the last 2. But who knows what adjustments the Bucks are going to make. They don't even have the same head coach anymore, so things are going to be looking a little bit different. On the rebound front, this season, 12 and 13 rebounds against them. Prior to that, hasn't gone so well. Over his last 10 games, he's gotten 10 plus rebounds in every single one, but he's covered this line in 7 out of 10 games, averaging 13.1. So I think if you take Jared Allen and get a double-double, I feel like those odds will probably be a little bit too low. But if you could probably pull his points line down, if you had some alt markets, if you can get him maybe 11.5 points and 10 rebounds, or 13.5 points and 10 rebounds, probably a lot more convincing. So something for Jared Allen fans to look into. Looking at his assists, he did go on this hot streak probably 10, 15 games ago of getting a lot of assists, and he started to regress back. So line at 3.5, I wouldn't take it. That's not his thing. Donovan Mitchell can do all that, but yeah, maybe some alternate lines for his rebounds and his points props. If you can get them at good odds, might be something worth considering. The next one has been Dame Lillard. Cavs, they allow the third fewest assists to point guards over their last 15 games. On the season, they allow the fewest assists to point guards. So really looking at a Dame under in assists based off the matchup here. And looking at the data in his last 10, he's averaging 7.1 assists. He's hit this 6 out of his last 10 games. Looking about how he's played against Cleveland, he's got under in all 3 games. 3, 4, and 5 assists against them. That's partly why we see 6.5 assists, 124 odds. Pretty good. Might be something that I take, but let's have a look at his points. Has he scored well against Cleveland? He did last year. He scored 50. 2 games against Cleveland this year, 31 and 17. Looking at his last 10, yeah, can't get a read at Dame Lillard in scoring, I'll tell you. But we do like the assists. I don't mind the under in his assists. Rebound prop, that's very inconsistent as well, but has it rebounded well against the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. So maybe a rebound and assist. He's only averaging 6 rebounds and assists against the Cavs in his last 3, but his line for this one is set at 11.5. So interesting one there. Something I might have to investigate a little bit further. Malik Beasley. Let's have a look at him. The Cavs allow the least points to shooting guards this season. Over the last 15, they allow the 6th fewest points. Looking at his points, he scored 15 and 2 against them in the 2 games this year. In his last 10, he's covered this in 6 out of 10 games. But over his last 7 games, he's covered this the 6 times. So Malik Beasley, you could say he is in better form, but he faces the most difficult matchup that he's had all year. And in his last 7 games, the only game he did go under, this one right here, just happened to be against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I'm not saying he would go under because he has gone over before, but that's just a play that I won't take given how inconsistent it is. Chris Middleton, he doesn't have a great matchup or a bad matchup, so let's just look at his numbers. Against the Cavs this year, 13 and 2 points, nothing spectacular. In his last 10, he's averaging 15.9. Rebound-wise, gone under most of the games. 2 out of 10 games is how many times he's covered it. And his rebound numbers were low against the Cavs as well. But I also think his minutes were down. Yeah. 1 game, he had 20 minutes. In his last 10, he has a few. So I think these are back-to-back games. He plays only 20 minutes. So he's on a minutes restriction on back-to-backs. The Bucks aren't on a back-to-back, so you can assume Chris Middleton will get back to playing, over 30 minutes per game. So if we filter Chris Middleton lines by at least 30 points, we'll probably get to see a bit more consistency. Chris Middleton, fucking hell. I just realized I wasn't sharing my screen. My bad. Let's have a look at it. So this is Chris Middleton's games when he plays at least 30 minutes. Points-wise, if we get Chris Middleton playing over 30 minutes per game, we can see he's hit this 15.5 point line in 9 out of 12 games. So Chris Middleton points could be something that we look at. Rebound wise, got to do this filter all over again. Chris Middleton to play more than 30 points. Let's leave it at 29.5. His rebound numbers actually don't get any better. His assists, he's only averaging 5.6 assists in his last 10. He's hit that 5 times. 2 matchups against the Cavs, 11 and 2. But let's have a look. When we change his minutes to 30, he's averaging 6.9 assists in those games. But in that 1 game against the Cavs earlier this year, he played 30-something minutes. Yep, 33 minutes. He pulled down 10 assists. So, yeah, I think Chris Middleton, depending on whether you believe he's going to get the minutes, that could be a really good play. No, I think about it. But apologies, I'm not sure how long I wasn't sharing my screen for. My goodness. But I think the main thing you would have missed, Jared Allen. Let's have a quick look at his. So He's got great form against the Bucks in points and in rebounds. In his last 10 games, his rebound numbers consistent as hell. Dame Lillard, looking at his assists, last 10 games has been pretty good, but check this out. Against the Cavs, hasn't been able to get many assists off, hasn't been able to get many rebounds off as well against the Cavs. So if you're looking at a rebounds and an assist line for Dame, it's at 11.5. The most he's recorded is 7. So they're probably the two main things you would have missed. We went through Malik Beasley. Let's go through Giannis Antetokounmpo. So we'll look at all props for Giannis. But in terms of his matchup, the Cavs allow the 4th fewest rebounds to power forwards this season and over their last 15 games. We're looking at his points prop here. Against Cleveland, he's covered in 3 of his last 4, averaging 33.3 points per game. Rebound-wise, 14 and 16 in his last 2 against the Cavs, so that's a huge effort. Assist-wise, he's gone under in those 3, so heavy on the points and rebounds, under on the assists. So that's what it looks like on the head-to-head matchup. Looking at his last 10, though, far out, 7.9 assists per game, averaging, covering in 7 of his last 10. Obviously, hasn't done many assists against the Cavs, but then looking at his last 10 on the rebound front, he's averaging 12.8 rebounds per game. And looking at his points, he's averaging 31.9, but he's only covered this line in 2 of 10. So this could be a difficult one. His matchup against the Cavs is very different to how he's been playing everybody else. So Giannis, his lines are always very high. So if you're just looking at a PRA, would you take under 53.5 against the Cavs? He's hit it in his last 2, so I probably wouldn't. We don't know how they're going to play with a new coach and all that type of shit. So, but let's look into the last player of this game. Let's go Brook Lopez. The Cavs allow the 4th least points and the 5th least rebounds over the last 15 games. Looking at his points, 12.5 is his line. That's actually quite low. Sometimes we see his line at 15.5 depending on the matchup. His line was actually 15.5 in the last matchup against the Cavs, but he only finished on 11. Look at how he's gone against the Cavs. 5 games, he's gone under in 3 straight. Rebound-wise, yeah, a bit unpredictable there with Brook Lopez. So, look, I'm not going to touch Brook at all. Let's jump into the next game. Looking at the Phoenix Suns versus the Dallas Mavericks. So, Kyrie, Luka, Eric Gordon, Seth Curry, Dante Exum, all game-time decisions. So, very limited markets at the moment. So, really just got the Phoenix Suns guys to play off. But let's have a look at Devin Booker. We'll have a look at all of his lines. But the Mavs, they allow the 5th fewest points and the 4th most rebounds to point guards this season. Over their last 15 games, they allow the 3rd fewest points to point guards. So, looking at his points prop, Devin Booker, he's hit this in 2 of 4 games against the Dallas Mavericks, averaging 23.8. In his last 10 games, he's hit this 4 times, averaging 27.4. So, it's a bit unpredictable about how he's going to score. I think the one interesting thing is how does he play with or without Luka? Because they've got some sort of rivalry. It's kind of simmered down a little bit, but when those two are in the building, they're fierce competitors. So Luka played all 4 games, so it's not a Luka thing that impacts his ability to score or not. So yeah, tough to get a read on a lot of Phoenix Suns players, but I'll go through them all anyway. Rebounds. There's his rebounds. He's hit that in 4 of 10, averaging 3.6. And assists, he's hit this in 4 of 10 as well, averaging 7 assists per game. Against the Mavs, he has passed the ball quite well. His last 2 games against the Dallas Mavericks, he had 10 assists. So that could be another option, just taking it as assist prop. But once again, his last 10, it's been inconsistent. So where are you going to put the stock if, Luka, Kyrie, who's going to play? So I'd probably wait till lineups are confirmed, really, because you'd hate to bet on an assist prop and then for a blowout to occur. Let's have a look at Bradley Beal. The Mavs allow the 3rd most points, 3rd most rebounds, and the most assists to shooting guards over the last 15 games. On the season, they allow the 4th most points, 2nd most rebounds, and the 5th most assists. So shooting guards have an excellent matchup against the Dallas Mavericks overall. Bradley Beal, he's covered his 18.5 points prop in 5 of 10 games, averaging 20. 1 game against the Dallas Mavericks. This was last year. He's got 22 points. He got no rebounds, and he got 4 assists. Looking at his rebound prop over his last 10, he's hit it 5 times, averaging 4.5 rebounds. And looking at his assists, he's hit that 6 times, averaging 4.7. So, again, there's no consistency with these Suns players, and that's not because of them. It's because of how their team's structured. They are very deep. There's nothing in the data that says Bradley Beal is going to go crazy, apart from the fact that he does have a great matchup, but there's no real form that you can go off. Speaking about form, though, Kevin Durant, he's in great form. So his points line is back to 30 points. So you can see this dotted line here. His line's been sitting around 26.5, 25.5 for quite some time. He's had 2 back-to-back games where he scored 40-plus points. Pacers and the Chicago Bulls. They are easy matchups, but the Dallas Mavericks are too. The Mavs allow the second most points to power forwards this year. So KD over 30.5. I do like it. In head-to-head matchups, though, he scored 37 twice. He scored 26 and then 16 earlier this season. I wonder, in that 16-point game, he still played 42 minutes, but he only shot the ball 11 times. So before I take a bet on Kevin Durant, I'd probably look at some film to figure out why he only shot the ball that many times. He played 42 minutes. Did he get 20 assists in that game? He got 7. So nothing spectacular on that front. But yeah, KD points could be a good option. The last one in this game is Jusuf Nurkic. Looking at his rebounds, the Mavs allow the 4th most rebounds to centers, but Jusuf Nurkic hasn't helped cover this line in 3 games against the Mavs. In his last 10, he is averaging 11.2 rebounds, so form's quite good, but against the Mavs, for some reason, he hasn't done so well. Let's jump into the last game before I set you guys free. Looking at the Atlanta Hawks versus the Golden State Warriors, important thing to note is that Trae Young is still out, so DeJounte Murray will be the point guard. Let's look at Steph Curry. We'll look at all his props. The Hawks allow the 4th fewest points, but the 4th most assists to point guards this season, and we're also seeing a very similar trend over the last 15 games. Steph Curry's line's at 28.5. He's only hit that in 16 games this year, and 2 in his last 10. In head-to-head matchups, this was last year, though. He scored 31 points against the Hawks, so I've bet Steph Curry unders in points quite a few times this year, and it's worked quite well for me. But 28.5 does seem a little bit high, especially for a team that doesn't allow a lot of points to point guards. Looking at his assist prop, though, 5.5. He's covered in 7 of his last 10, averaging 6.1. I'd take the 5.5 assist prop immediately if the odds weren't at minus 154. So against the Hawks, he had 5 assists last time, but looking at his last 10, Chris Paul's still out. Assist numbers are trending upwards. So just want to have a quick look at his rebound props. He's only hit that in 2 of his last 10, 6 in his last game against the Hawks. So not rebounding very well at the moment, but I do like the under in his points, over in his assists. So there could be a value play on that, but need to look into it a little bit more. Jalen Johnson. So the Warriors allow the 2nd most assists over the last 15 games. They allow the 4th most assists to power forwards on the season. But his assist numbers inconsistent. It's not his key calling card. 17.5 point is his line. He's only covered that 9 times this year. Without Trae Young, how's he gone? Without Trae Young, he's 0 from 3. That's this season. When Trae Young doesn't play, that's how many points Jalen Johnson scores. Doesn't have the easiest matchup in the world in terms of scoring. So I think I did this on the last video. I had a look at his PRAs. So without Trae Young, he struggled. Rebound-wise, he's gone under. Assist-wise, he goes under. Points-wise, he goes under. So there could be a good option to fade Jalen Johnson in this one. I just don't like taking unders, but I don't think it's going to be the most easy matchup for him either. There is some athletic players for this old Warriors team. The cum bucket, Andrew Wiggins. But Jalen Johnson does have the size advantage, but I don't know if he's got the heart. Who else is there that we can look into? Clint Capella, he's boring. Sadiq Bey, no one wants to bet on him. Klay Thompson, people want to bet on his unders? Let's have a look. Points-wise, his line's 19.5. He's hit this in 4 of his last 10, averaging 17.2. 2 head-to-head matchups against the Hawk. Scored 54 points in one game, then 15 in the next. I don't know Klay Thompson. Man's got to retire. Rebounds and assists, not telling me too much. So I think, the main thing, I wouldn't be betting too much on this Hawks versus Warriors game. Steph Curry, that is a very interesting play. Oh, actually, DeJounte Murray, what am I thinking? Last 10 games, he's hit this 3 times. 26.5 points is his line. Head-to-head matchups, 25 and 10 against the Warriors. Assist-wise, a bit inconsistent, but let's just really have a look at his numbers without Trae Young. So, This season, without Trae Young, he's had assist numbers of 10, 9, 11, and 6. Points-wise, with no Trae Young, 32, 20, 22, and 35. Rebound-wise, 5, 4, 3, and then 10 against the Sacramento Kings. So the Warriors, as bad as they are playing, they allow a lot of points, but they don't actually allow a lot of assists. So a points prop might be a good option there for DeJounte, but look, to be honest, I'm not absolutely loving too much about this game. So look, that's a wrap on the preview of all 8 games. I apologize if I didn't have props.cash for a portion of that preview. I've paused my bloody edit to open the door for the dog, and I must have forgot to put it back on. So the good thing is I didn't stop recording. I just stopped sharing my screen for a small moment, so I do apologize. I am getting freaking sick again, so my head's a little bit cloudy at the moment, but last time I had the flu, the tips and the picks, they performed very well. So let's jump straight into the recap, and then we'll shut this thing off. Give me 1 sec while I load this thing up. All right, here we are in my bet analytics. We had 7 bets on the most recent day. Finished -4 units. Absolutely shocking. We had 1 winner, but let's go through them all, and I'll tell you what I learned about them. So the first one was Michael Porter Jr. took his over in points. He didn't get close to it. He shot terribly, but I think the key learning there is I found out after the game that Michael Porter Jr. had been battling an illness, so he was sick. Still suited up to play, but he wasn't close to 100%, so that contributed to his poor performance. Nikola Jokic was our value player of the day. It was looking great, and then in the last minute, he hit 2 3-pointers to go over his points line. He hit his rebounds in his assist line, but that killed us. Jalen Brunson picked him for a big game, scored 30-plus points. Didn't get the 40 that I needed, but he cashed his over. So we got 1.2 units profit, really, from Jalen Brunson. And then Josh Giddey was the last play. I think I put too much stock on his last game against the Trailblazers. That's where he was like the youngest player to shoot 100% from the field, playing less than 25 minutes with a triple-double. I got bought into the hype and thought he could do something similar, and he didn't get close. He was absolutely dreadful, so we didn't cash the 3 plays of Josh Giddey. Lost 3 units on him alone. But, yeah, look, -4 units on a day. That sucks. So we're -1.2 units for January, and that motivates me to change it. We're at 50 units profit for the year, so a couple of good days to end this month, and we'll hopefully finish January in the green. But look, as you know, I'm getting sick. I'm tired. This preview's been long, but I do hope you guys appreciate it. Regardless of how sick I am tomorrow, I'll back it up. I'll put another video out. We'll get these previews happening. Let me know what you think. Like the video. Sub to you new. See, I'm sick. I can't even speak English anymore. Sub to you new. Far out. Let me play this song and get the hell out of here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Sub to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to your line from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. You don't even have to pay me.